Oh my gosh, we are live. Welcome to Easy to Read Deep Thoughts with my special guest, Sandy Wolf. Sandy and I have been talking for, oh my gosh, it's over a year, right? Like two. Yeah, I don't remember. We've been talking for a while. Uh, yeah, and I believe I say it somewhere in this article. Sandy is somebody that I listen to for advice. That when she says it, I usually when she tells me something it percolates, it spins in my mind for a while, and I end up thinking about it for days on end. And historically, I'm not sure how many data points I'm working with here. A few, a fair amount. Historically, the average is she says some. I think about it for many days, many hours on end, and then determine that she was right. And like I had a level, I had, yeah. You say something, you plant like a perspective target or a flagpole, and then I gotta adjust my perspective to match what you're talking about. But it's now I'm just speaking off the cuff here.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah. It takes me a bit to realize what you were saying. Like there's a journey that's required. It's not instant absorption. It's like I have to understand your understanding, and that takes a little bit, right? And it doesn't always happen, and it's yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
um
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I would say I mentioned to all of my clients, and I get to work with brilliant executives and leaders just like you every day. I always say, number one, take or leave what I say, or what I'm observing, because a lot of it's not projecting my own opinion on people, but also, take time to discern. And if it's not right for you, throw it out. So to that point where it's like, yes, a decision in the moment with coaching usually isn't necessary unless we're deciding on some huge challenges that need an answer right now.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah, awesome. Oh my gosh. So I am introductions. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to ask that you introduce yourself, and then we'll describe the structure of the show, and then we will dive right into it. My name is Jonathan Geyer. My first noteworthy note: I helped implement a health information exchange for the state of Minnesota, and I did this while stationed in St. Cloud, VA. In that opportunity, I was able to sit down and drink a cup of coffee with 30 some odd thousand veterans, and that's a big deal. Sandy and I, we talk about intuition quite a bit, and the yeah. Speaking with all these people, this I'm going to tiptoe over that rabbit hole because out of those 30,000 conversations, I still remember 30,000 conversations worth of data points. Like they didn't disappear. If we yeah. So super interesting. Yeah, and in terms of like a measurement of intuition, that's all these conversations. Oh gosh, now I went down the rabbit hole. Now these conversations stayed with me, and I can analyze my inputs to their outputs today, how many years later, and I can analyze that with a very descriptive. I remember the hairs on their head while we were talking, just how my memory works. Yep. Awesome. Oh my gosh. Second noteworthy note: I coach a boxing class here locally. We just crossed 500,000 views, 500,000 views last week. That's been a real big deal. There's people from all around the world that are joining in our class, which is where I coach people to do hard things, and that is an awesome segue for Sandy.
Mhm.
Please introduce yourself.
Yes. Well, thank you, Jonathan. Always happy to come back to your platform again. I know that
Yes, ma'am.
your viewership is pretty immense, and I always appreciate a conversation. And so, my name is Sandy Hansen Wolf. I have been an executive leadership entrepreneur, strategist, and coach and advisor for over 20 years. And the reason that I got into this industry was I would say just saying yes to opportunities as they came. I had my own company for about 2 decades, and in that time, when other leaders and owners saw that I turned around my company along with my employees, of course, and many other factors, would ask me to help them scale, build, rebuild, turn around their company and position it for sale. And I was the owner, the private owner, the sole owner of my company for almost 2 decades, and sold 4 years ago, and now have moved to what I was doing on the side to doing this full time, which is working with very brilliant people, very brilliant teams, and helping them see the path and go down a successful path using what I would consider some of the unique platforms that we haven't really learned to utilize very well, which is incorporating intuition and not just thinking, but heart and gut instinct into decision making. And I built a model off of that that works beautifully, because when we only use our brain to think, we miss out on some important information that's a lot of times sends businesses, sends leaders, executives, whatever it is, on tangents that are not successful, profitable, and cost a lot of money. So I'm just thrilled to do the work I do every day.
Yeah, holy cow. So this is an interesting situation because I'm a coach, right? And you're basically you're my coach, and it's from this perspective. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's like a third person perspective. I am outside of my body looking backwards at my body and how I respond to you and your advice. And it's yeah, like knowing better doesn't really change anything, right? Like you say something and my first response is nah, or I'm gonna go do my own, like a little kid. Yeah, I'm picturing a little kid going through a store. I want the toy. Yeah. And it usually takes a little bit, and that's the percolation I was describing in my introduction here at the start. Like I got to think about it for a little bit. My first thought is rejecting everything, like the oppositional is what they called it in school. Yeah. But after a while, it's like, yeah, first I throw my guards up, and then it, over time, it's like, oh, she's right, or yeah. Super interesting. I forgot what you said that.
Jonathan, a lot of times the value of, and sometimes I actually cringe a little to label myself as a coach. A lot of times I'll use consultant or, personal advisor, or a strategist or something like that. And the reason I say that is because I want to be respectful to the coaching industry. I've gone through extensive certification processes, which are fairly tedious, but really important. And there's a lot of, regulation that's coming, I think, to the coaching industry on various levels and strategic planning. But a lot of people decide they want to become a coach and just kind of hang their shingle and say, I'm a coach now. And so people a lot of times get confused on who to hire and what to look for in a seasoned coach that has really done their own homework and actually lived what you are wanting coaching on. And so I think that's just a really important distinction. And that doesn't mean that I'm way better than everyone else by any means. I'm learning as I go every day. But there's a lot of, people I know as great colleagues, which have little experience leading others or leading companies or having, their own company, yet are trying to coach others. And to their benefit, sometimes it's working out well.
Yeah. This is a rabbit hole I'd like to dive down. Your camera froze just a little bit, but I'm going to keep going if you're cool with it.
Yeah, keep going.
All right. Yeah. How did you? Oh, well, coaching. I assume you're still there. I'm not seeing you. Let me back up because I might have to re-add you. Awesome. Okay. I had to minimize my screen so I could re-add you. Coaching wise, I'm picturing what you just said as like the gap, the delta, the mush in between categorical variables and discrete variables, right? Like being able to successfully running a company, selling a company, whatever justification somebody has to become a coach. You said hang your shingle, or maybe, yeah, whatever success the person viewing coaching is hanging their shingle on or measuring their next their this move into coaching from is like is a discrete variable. I was successful here, so I should be able to teach other people to be successful. And I see this in coaching, and that's what I'm going to speak to here. I see this in coaching where if you boxed and you boxed good, you know, you can coach other people. That's not what I see. Like it's counterintuitive, because if you're a good boxer, you should be able to coach well. You should be able to be a good boxing coach, and that's not the case at all. It's the discrete measure is not accurate. It's categorical. Like few people are able to take that experience, mush it, craft it into something that's useful for other people that don't have those frames or references, and then provide it to them. Like, so, like, yeah, like teaching my little kids about quantum mechanics, right? Like describing the discrete measures behind and the theories behind quantum mechanics is not the way to go. It's whatever metaphor I'm able to take this high level concept and digest it down, to break it down to something simple they can understand. That skill level is a categorical measure that's super hard to measure, you know, measurement bias, super hard to measure, but that's the most significant variable. You can be awesome at business and just suck at being a coach. Or in my case, this is more common than not. Awesome boxers are horrible coaches. Like, actually, I would say that's the average. Yeah, I would say that's 80% of boxing gyms out there. They're not good at conveying that information because it's hard. It's challenging to do. One doesn't guarantee the other.
I agree, Jonathan. You know, and 'tis good to be humble, right? And also, what I see is, you know, just because someone had leadership success, doesn't mean they understand everything about business, you know,
True.
or what it takes to lead a team and a company and so on. And that said, I have colleagues who like I admire tremendously. And so really, you know, when people are selecting a coach, even I tell them, you know, you have to find somebody, number one, that aligns with, does this feel right? Like, does this partnership feel right? And then also pay attention to what I call old paradigm versus new paradigm thought. So many models, whether it be coaching or strategic planning, you know, are in any industry are running off of models that have been around for decades. And I believe we're really in this, what I call new paradigm times, where the things that used to work or maybe only worked with, you know, 50% or less success, the times have changed so much that we really need to jump and elevate to a new way of coaching, training, advising, leading teams. And I feel like the coaching that I do really offers a unique perspective that I haven't seen very often. You know, number one, I'm not just into thinking about goals. I kind of take a process that I call the infinity loop method, where it's like we're looping in what I've often read about as three brains: our you know, logical head brain, our heart as a second brain. Like, is this something that really aligns with me? Am I passionate about it? Because it's really hard to make anything successful if we don't have a connection to it on a heartfelt level. And then the third brain is that what they call the gut brain, or that intuition. And when you can loop all three of those and it's a flow of information, it prevents a lot of incorrect paths that we go down and spend a lot of money on. There's a lot of times, if we learn, I teach a lot of executives and leaders how to use that method, that flow of information, to make decisions, to save a lot of money and not go down wrong paths. And also to work on intuition as a key driver in how we make informed decisions before we like take the elevator back up to our brain and just like, oh, you know, this sounds right in my head, so I'm going to go for it. Every time people go against gut instinct, failure is imminent. And so if we can just, cut that off at the pass, we save a lot of time and resources. And it's a great way to align teams too. So like it works, and it works way better than the old paradigms. And I've tried it over and over and over again, and I've yet to see any sort of failure with that sort of model.
You just described something that's global. Like it's all of humanity is subject to this dependency of a flawed. I talk about this quite a bit. You just touched on measurement bias, and I am going to dip a foot into this rabbit hole and then come back out. Like gut feeling. You and I have had this conversation before, but intuition, this gut feeling, it's in our current culture, in our current I want to say global perspective, but I suppose I can speak to the United States or our American perspective more than other cultures. It's suppressed. It's a measurement bias. If you can't see it, it's not real, right? Like if you can't measure it using the scientific method, it's not real. Okay, well, what does that mean? That means that all conclusions produced, all outputs of the scientific method were dependent on the scientific method. So then any of the flaws, I'm a visual thinker, and I'm picturing this like lenses, as that light travels through those lenses, the lenses impacts what you see, what the output is. Well, the scientific method is lenses, and there is flaws within those lenses. So all outputs through the scientific method, what we're seeing is not reality. We are seeing the output of the scientific method. And the big part here is that's different. That's counterintuitive. We assume this is the measurement bias that you spoke to. We assume that what we're able to measure is what we're trying to measure, and that's not right. Like we know it's not right. Like it's not right. What all these massive conclusions that don't prioritize gut feelings and intuition and all this other stuff. This measurement bias of if we can't measure, it's not real, is it's a flaw in perception, because it really all conclusions are just saying this is what we were able to measure, and that is different than saying this is how the universe works, right? Like I'm picturing this is a major rabbit hole, but it's a big deal. It's why people don't take intuition seriously, because you can't measure intuition. Well, you know what that means? That means you can't measure intuition. That's it. And then this is important because you can measure it. Well, it's actually just saying that you can measure this. It's not saying this is how the universe works. It's saying that this is what we can measure. It's a tiny little sample set in this massive population of data.
Yeah.
Right? So all conclusions that we're taking from this tiny little measurable sample set, they're flawed, right? Like it's talking to one person and assuming the other 8 billion people on the planet work like that.
And really, Jonathan, it is about keeping things simple, and it's also about meeting people where they're at. And what I would say is that with my method, it's about alignment first. Like, is what I'm thinking, is this path that I'm going down? And you've seen this where you'll tell me, here's what I'm thinking. And, I'm very unapologetic for telling my clients that I do intuitive work. Like I will get information for people, and
I'll testify to that.
And so it looks like the camera stopped again, and we're having some tech difficulties here.
No worries.
So I'm just going to keep going with the tech difficulties here in place. So what I would say to that is, we still need to, when I go through this method of, okay, we've seen now this path that works really well. We still need to come back to what goals are we going to make now that we saw the path. So it's still measurements, and, like, okay, we saw this as a success path. What now do we need to do? Goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not more than 5, to make this measurable. So it's just a different method to getting to complete alignment, if that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does. The intuition's kind of like the tip of the spear, or it's the guide, but once you get there, you still got to, or not once you get there, once you have that impression, that intuition, that this is where you should go, you still got to grab a map and draw a path, right? Like actually quantify this. Oh, we're working again. Quantify this unquantifiable kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So it's still the same. Like we still need measurable goals and outcomes. And my goal as a coach is I like to fast track things. Like we don't have time to wait anymore. The speed of the world is so fast. And so when we can align our intuitive nudges with solid goals, the outcomes, they're mind blowing. The speed to results, the speed to success. And that doesn't sound right or well. So like I still take mainstream business and mainstream strategy. I just add all of this in as far as like, we need to do a gut check of like, does this feel right? A heart check. Like, are we even passionate about doing this? Because if those two things are off on the goal that we're thinking about, we might as well not do it. And just that process saves companies a lot of funds and a lot of time, because when we can do that and make sure all that's in alignment with the goals that we're setting, it's crystal clear and it's certain that those paths can happen if all three are like, it feels good, I can think through it, I can see the vision. So but again, it still comes to measurable outcomes that we have in each session. It's just a different way to do some additional homework, which is very simple. It's not if it's not simple now, it's not going to work. And so I'm really convicted on it because I have yet to see it fail, which if you ask anyone like, oh, I had a gut instinct on that and I went against it, it was always a path to destruction or, like a lot of chaos and kind of a regrouping. So if we just had a process to start, I did this after I sold my company. I realized like, well, there were sometimes we made goals and I was sitting at my own boardroom table saying, I'm not feeling it. And every single time I had that nudge in the beginning and we went down the path anyway, we spent time, we spent resources, and we had a team that was frustrated. So we always had to back up. So I created a model where we could head that off in the beginning. So we're always taking aligned paths more than not, and still getting to those measurable outcomes of like, we saw profit increases of 10x, 100x. But it's really, really speed to results is my methodology in doing this instead of tripping over what's going to work.
I believe what you just said now spoke to what I was attempting to describe earlier, where I usually reject, right? I fight you like a little kid that doesn't want to clean his room. And then after a while, it's like, she's right. I should go clean my room. That journey is a standard feature in my life. I was active listening.
You know what I'll add, Jonathan? I say this very humbly because it gets goosebumps every time I see it. When we loop all of this in and just go to, be unafraid, like just be unapologetic for rising up a new platform of how we do coaching. And I've been told this, it's not me making something up, but like I've had people look me in the eye and go, what you just did in this hour changed my life. Or what you did in this team meeting, just this one day, changed the trajectory of our business. And then I watch it over time. And, within 6 months, their revenues are way up. Their team is aligned. They're feeling better about working together. And so it's really about that human element first of like, we need to know how powerful we are to make better decisions right out of the gate so that we're not spending extra time and frustration and sleepless nights getting to something that could be clear right in the beginning. And so I start all of my clients with at least a half day, what I call a VIP session. And we get to clarified and aligned goals on day one, instead of waiting for 3 months of coaching. We just don't have that time anymore. And nor do people want to hire me that long. So like, I'm all about, let's get to results quick that align and make you feel like you're flourishing again in every area, happiness, less stress, more revenue, whatever it is.
You you just touched on my there again. I will testify to this if if the opportunity comes up, or recommend what you just described has been my experience in our conversations talking with you, right? Like pat myself on the back, and I'm saying this fairly egotistically, but I consider myself an intelligent person, right? Like and aware, and I consider myself well experienced. And 30 seconds into our conversation, you point something out that I haven't thought of, never crossed my mind. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
awesome. And that has happened often enough that my boastful claim to recommending your coaching to others, that's where it comes from. I've
Well,
saw it
thank you,
with my
Jonathan.
own eyes. And
I
it's go ahead. What were you saying?
appreciate that. And it's really what I've learned the hard way, like this is about coaching best practices,
Yes,
is
ma'am.
a lot of platforms come with these very complicated models that look really good on a website. And I'm going through a website revamp now, but like my methodology has to be simple, and it has to be easy to understand. And we don't like a lot of matrices and different platforms. We want it to be simple and easy. And it doesn't matter if you're in a big corporation, or a solo entrepreneurship type of situation. And a lot of people just, so the whole confuse you lose. So best practices is when I started telling the truth of what I do, which is align some of my intuitive gifts with executive coaching, and my education in executive coaching. That's when my coaching practice took off a few years ago, when I was trying to be like everyone else and listen to everyone else's models and try to follow them. I was I wasn't closing clients like I that I am now, humbly, of course. And it's kind of just floundering with, like, how do I stand out and be unique? And then it came to me, it's like, I'm just going to tell the truth. And if they don't, that I align I teach people how to use those gifts, though, too. Like, you have them. We just never got taught to use that very, very essential tool. So it's not about me projecting onto anyone or some sort of hocus pocus, but it's really about owning. Like, if you're going to be in the best practices of coaches, my opinion is we have to figure out what voice we're going to have, what brand we're going to have, but like, how are we doing it that we are really willing to just go for it and tell them our secret sauce. And to me, it's about listening attentively and catching those nuggets that I hear from you, and in a very simple and charismatic way, sharing what's coming for you to discern yourself. And when I get told quite often, like, wow, my last coach, it took 6 months and we still never got to the point we did in one day. And I'm like, thank you. Like, it just makes me so happy, because nobody has time to waste anymore.
And that ties back into what is the difference between a coach and a great coach. It's hard to measure, but I believe that's what you just, or I consider that's what you just described, right? Like I know through my own personal experience and coaching for 20 years, there's stuff that I'm discovering today that somebody told me 20 years ago, and that 20-year gap didn't need to happen, but it happened. And as far as I can tell, that plays out for most people like that, to one degree or the other.
Right. Yeah, and what I would also add to that, Jonathan, my role is to guide, not to tell or project. And, homework isn't essential a lot of times. So, it's for you to decide when you're ready to hear it. So.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Your camera. Oh, nice. Awesome.
I don't know sorry. Technology is best, right?
My intuition said we would have camera issues today. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep going.
Yes, ma'am. Holy cow! I lost what you just said there. So I'm trying to active listen, but yeah, You're saying so many cool things. I want to jump in, and I'm like stopping myself from.
Yeah, well, in your writing too, Jonathan, it talked about, we have to be ready to receive
Yes, ma'am.
the coaching, and it's really up to the person. When we have a session, it's up to the person what they want to implement. But a lot of times, if people, there's the return on coaching sometimes is immediate, where it's like, we went on a new path and it was very lucrative. And sometimes the return on coaching is, oh my gosh, Sandy and I were working on that 2 years ago. Now I'm ready for it. So like, it's kind of synergistic. It can be immediate, and sometimes it just builds on. So it even if you got coached 10 years ago, sometimes you'll pull that piece of information out, that now is the time to do something with it.
We are coming up on time. I would like to, yeah. So I'm a visual thinker, and what you're describing and how you're describing it is popping into my head like two different gears. I've had this visual before, but you're inspiring it again here. You have the input of what you're saying, and then you have the output, or not the output, the environment of how, when, where, how it's being said. Like, so the actual information, then the receiver's ability to receive it is a separate variable, separate gear, and they don't spin at the same speeds. They're not perfectly connected. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio. You say it and they receive 0.05% of it. Or I'm just making this up to try to visualize how these two different things don't line up. They're both mush. Oh my gosh. Another visual is popping into my head, like the torque converter on your car. You have your engine, you have your tires. There's a mush in between there. Perception has that mush. The input of good coaching and the output of good coached, past tense, there's a mush in between there, and it's impossible to get that 1-to-1 ratio. Mm-hmm. Like the receiver has to be ready to receive the information. Tell somebody not to drink, and it might take them 20 years to understand, like, oh, this is bad, because they're just not ready for it. And it's not a fixable situation. It's a guidable situation. Oh my gosh. Now I'm thinking dichotomies. It's not fix, not fix. It's inspire them to go in that direction, and hopefully they'll find their way. Right. It's like, yeah. Oh my gosh. Which ties back into the difference, the delta between good coaching and coach and good coaching, right? Like how act, because this is categorical stuff. You can't directly measure it. It's an indirect measure. It's gravitational lensing, not seeing the dark matter, right? Like you can see the effects of, not the input of. Yeah. Super. Oh my gosh. Super interesting. We are 3 minutes over time. We can keep going if you'd like, or oh my gosh, we didn't really read any of this, but I'm cool with that. Yeah. Something I like, well, first I would like you to plug your service there. Again, I will plug it. Sandy has told me many things, that she saw things before I saw them. Yep. I will sign off on that. Yeah.
Well, and I would say what I help people and teams and companies do, like I work with a lot of executives. Number one, I love being that confidant to really brilliant people. A lot of times they're just looking for someone to bounce something off of, or someone just to talk to that's gone through the same challenges.
And it matters. That's a big deal. Yeah. That's a huge deal.
So I work one-on-one with, great leaders, and the team and facilitation work I do to align groups, and the speaking I do. It all is just, I feel like it's like a pinch me kind of career. I just love it all. And I love when I can see people just taking a path that's working for them. So, and it's working much better and much quicker. So just really thrilled to talk about that and have the ability to work with brilliant executives and leaders and teams from all over the world.
When I talk about you, because most of my LinkedIn connections are national, they're not local. I describe you as a local celebrity, the who's who. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of the work we do, obviously, with Zoom and technology and whatever platform, is we can be all over the world. and be in our own office. So yeah, I just think, there's so many things coming out on remote viewing and the power of aligned thought and intuition and all of that. And to me, I just make them one thing, which is great coaching to the best of my ability. And again, sometimes I'm in near tears to see how fast that works instead of the slow old paradigm ways, if I might say that. So
yeah, awesome. Oh my gosh, that was another inspiration for a few more rabbit holes. But we're at the end. Oh my
yes,
gosh, I'm going to
good
say
for today.
so coaching on the very top of the definition, because all words have a level of depth to their definition, or all actions have a level of depth to the definition themselves. Coaching could be that super general stuff, and then you just mentioned, I'm reluctant to even say, but you just mentioned a bunch of like caveats or facets within that coaching that might be interpreted differently, or some people are willing. It's coaching is super general, but there's all sorts of amazing, awesome known unknowns and unknown unknowns within that coaching. I'm thinking of it visually, like I'm picturing it like a bowl put over the top of a bunch of individual variants. Yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. So let's close this out. This was our conversations are awesome, Sandy. Let's close this out. I'm going to ask you to come up with a closing thought. The one thing you'd like our audience to take away from this conversation, what do you want them to think about tonight when this pops into their mind again?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think that's a great closing question. I would say, whenever you're thinking of hiring a strategist or a coach or an advisor, whatever you want to call them, consultant for anything, really check it, do your own intuitive gut instinct check-in of like, is this the right person for me? Is this, and really take a look at their practices and think about, is this going to be the same old that we've always done? Or does this person bring something new and refreshing that will actually work? That's what I've seen the difference in those that are just really helping people and companies, and those that are coming in and kind of bringing back the same old suitcase that we've used for too many decades of here's my model, we're just going to go through it, blah blah blah, doesn't really connect the human at all. And that human centric model is the only models that are working now.
Yes, ma'am. That's awesome. We're not going to improve that. That was a perfect ending.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. My pleasure.
Holy cow, what a great episode. For all that are watching, subscribe. Join us next week for our next awesome, amazing, perfect conversation for easy to read deep thoughts. Thank you all.